When I learnt about to do with Islam, and therefore I think it's really important to remember a time when that was possible.
I'm quite happy to remove this because this is not what should belong in this Parliament. A large majority of Australians wish to see the banning of the burqa.
Hanson, no, we will not be banning the burqa. Now, Senator Hanson, I am not going to pretend to ignore the stunt that you have tried to pull today. And I would caution you and counsel you, Senator Hanson, with respect, to be very, very careful of the offence you may do to the religious sensibilities of other Australians.
I share the concern with xenophobia, anti-Muslim sentiments. And I think in many ways the veil has come to epitomise European xenophobic fears. I'm not sure that it's the right time when we have reports coming out, as we just have, showing that a Muslim woman is 65% less likely than a white Christian counterpart to find employment in this country, at a time where we have increasing numbers of women being attacked for their visibility as Muslim women. Is this the right time to say that their visibility is the problem rather than the broader political parameters?
I think it represents an ideology that does not believe in Muslim women's rights to do anything but choose to cover her face. And I find that I believe that the niqab dangerously equates piety with the disappearance of women. And so I support banning it everywhere because it's not an obligation for a Muslim woman to cover her face.
It's interesting that throughout our history at different times, people have discussed and wanted to discuss the issue of is it farad or not? Is it an obligation or not? And I find as a woman, the argument that it is not farad, an interesting dismissal of the witnessing of women. The women of the Prophet ﷺ, by that I mean the women who were first there, who heard these verses first. Their response when they heard the verse was an immediate tearing of fabric that they had embroidered and stitched. Now, if you embroider and stitch fabric, you value it. They took this valuable fabric, tore it, and put it upon themselves. What does this tell us? It tells us that they heard, they understood, they responded. It tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that our sharia, our law, is based on looking at the personal responses of women to the Quran.
And my talk with you now, with you seeing my face, is going to be very different than if I was sitting here with my face covered. I believe the human face is...
I want to give Hiba a chance to jump in, of course, but I heard you use the singular personal pronoun I many times in that. I have no doubt you believe that, but why should your beliefs ban other people from wearing what they want to wear? That's what I don't get. Hiba, explain to me why you think the ban is a bad idea.
I think that it's a bad idea because I think it's yet another example of men telling women how to dress, how to live their life. It's another way to try to control women, and to take it to a government level and to try to legislate the way that a woman dresses is not just wrong and against human rights, but it really violates the whole basis that the democracy and democratic countries are based on. This is a free choice. This is something that I choose to wear. I disagree that it's some right-wing ideology. It is something that is permitted in Islam. I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering, and I am free to do whatever I want, and this is a choice that I want to make. And just because somebody doesn't accept my interpretation of Islam or personally like it, doesn't mean that we can use laws to violate people's freedom of expression and freedom of religion.
But let me just ask you this. When you go to the airport, you understand there are going to be obligations. They're going to have to check you for security like they check all the rest. When you get a driver's license, do they take a picture with or without your veil on?
Absolutely. I want everyone to know that as a Muslim woman, as a Muslim in America, I am just as concerned about safety and security as everybody else, and I have no problem whatsoever accommodating any security issues that come about when I enter a bank, when I go to the airport, when I go to the DMV. I show my face, and actually in Islam, we are required to show our identity when we're in a court system giving testimony. This is absolutely something that is essential for the security and identification of people, but that doesn't mean that I should be banned completely from what I choose to do.
Okay, Mona, let me jump in here. There are lots of types of dress that I look at and I don't like them. I think they're degrading. I think they're oppressive. I don't go around saying we should pass a law banning it. Isn't that fundamentally violative of the First Amendment? What possible reason can there be legally to say to somebody, you can't dress the way you want to dress?
Actually cannot walk outside naked. There are many states here in the US where 3 or more people cannot be together in public with wearing a face mask. So the government actually does legislate over our wardrobe, but everybody conveniently forgets that. Feminist groups, many women's rights groups have made the point that what the niqab does in a society, especially for Muslim women, is that it creates a spectrum where that is the pinnacle of piety and that is the good Muslim woman. And so of course it affects me.
The hijab is an empowering system. It is a system that gives women the opportunity to avoid the sexual exploitation that has been part of the capitalist system, to yet go out in the world and be an activist, be part of the cultural development of her society and her community.
In France, where this ban is going in effect, it's basically they become these political pawns.
Yeah,
That's why I said I oppose Sarkozy, but I oppose this on women, because what choice do women have besides covering their face? This ideology doesn't recognize Muslim women's rights.
Mona, I just have to push you on one thing here. There are certain prohibitions on the way people dress, or you mentioned nudity, that don't dress, that are in fact imposed upon us by law, but none of them that I'm aware of relates to a specific religion and says if you are a devout member of a religion, you cannot dress in a way that you are obligated to practice your religion, your choice of faith. Can you think of any example like that? Because I can think of 1,000 other laws, if this were upheld, that suddenly we would limit all sorts of things that people do for their religious beliefs because we don't agree with it. Wouldn't that be a very dangerous thing to do?
See, this is, I think, where these right-wing interpretations of religion get a free pass, because everybody says, well, it's my religious obligation. It's my religious right to do this.
While avoiding the harassment that has been part and parcel of life for women as they've tried to seek leadership and strength and authority in different places today, in our modern times. The hijab is a blessing. The hijab is a standard that says, I am a Muslim.
Let's look really at what we're talking about here. We're talking about the disappearance of women justified in the name of them becoming closer to God. So the closer you want to become to God, the less of you, the more you disappear.
But Mona,
I don't feel that I have disappeared at all.
Well, one at a time.
We disagree.
Guys, one at a time. Hiba, jump in. Tell us, has anybody forced you to do this? Is this something you're doing of your own free will?
Nobody has forced me to do this, and I really have to disagree with the statistics that Mona is trying to put forth, because studies have shown that there are only 2,000 women in France that wear the niqab. The majority of them are converts who converted to Islam and are voluntarily choosing to do it. This is my choice. Nobody can force me to take it off. I would not take it off even if you paid me to do it. And the fact of the matter is that I have never met a single Muslim woman in all of my travels around the world that is being forced to wear it. I understand Mona does not like it and does not want to wear it personally, but she keeps talking about her own feelings about it, and she wants to use the law to support it. If she wants a diversity in Islamic belief, then she has to accept my version just like she wants me to accept hers.
Mona, let me ask you this question. Do you have any evidence to support your statement that women are forced to wear this? And let me ask you this. If women are being forced to do something they don't want to do, there is recourse other than banning this entire mode of dress that is chosen.
I lived in Saudi Arabia, where millions of women are forced to cover their face.
Their response, those who tell you the Prophet ﷺ didn't say wear hijab, are dismissing the actions of these women. This is a Sahih Bukhari event. This is an event that is found in our most trusted resources. The hijab is a blessing. The hijab is a standard that says I am a Muslim. and put their hijab on. This is a word we use today, hijab. It's not the word of the Quran. The Quran uses different words to indicate hijab. Jalbabihinna and khimarihinna. Both of these words meaning the scarf that I'm wearing on my head today. Also, both of them, especially jalbabihinna, indicating also that fabric that comes down and covers the rest of the body.
But now that the argument will be, well, that's in Saudi Arabia, not in France. What choice does a woman have when she's told she will burn in hell if she doesn't cover every inch of her body? What kind of a choice is that? So, of course, these women who convert to this ideology...
I've never heard anybody say that.
The women who Muslim women's rights in order to uphold the Muslim right wing, which I believe is misogynist. With a law like that, a woman can tell her husband or any male relative who is forcing her to dress like this, the law says, I don't have to dress like this.
Mona, let's not deal with Saudi Arabia. Different customs, different laws. We have a First Amendment.
No, I was talking about France. I was talking about France.
Wait, hold on one second. In the United States, we have a First Amendment that gives people the right to practice religion as they wish. Do you not think that a law that in the United States that would ban this form of dress would violate the First Amendment permission to practice religion as each individual sees fit?
Well, this comes back to religion again. Everything is allowed just because someone says it's their religious belief. You know what I think?
No, Mona, you're going to jump in. Hold 1 second. It's banned or permitted until there is some compelling state interest on the other side, but it's got to be an overwhelming interest. What is the overwhelming interest that would justify us in banning a type of dress that people choose as a result of their religion?
Well, all the reasons I just gave you, but I will repeat. I believe that this is genuinely harmful to Muslim women because it creates this pinnacle of piety in which a Muslim woman is told this is the closest you can get to God, and she's disappeared.
The story of alcohol, when the people of Medina threw the alcohol in the streets, we proudly speak of this event as part of the proof that finally alcohol and drinking had been made haram. In the same way, we need to proudly speak of the event of these women who stood and heard and acted and put their hijab on. This is a word we use today, hijab. It's not the word of the Quran. The Quran uses different words to indicate hijab, especially jalbabihinna, indicating also that fabric that comes down and covers the rest of the body.
I'm no longer here. You don't even know who I am. The face is central to communication. And not just that, it objectifies women. The pinnacle of objectification.
Look, I agree with much of what you're saying, but not as the matter of law.
Thank you. Basically, I want people to know that when I choose to cover this way, it's because I am fighting against a systematic oppression against women in which women's bodies are being sexualized and objectified. This is a different perspective and a different form of empowerment in which I think when I'm in public, my sexuality is in my control and people have to deal with my brain and who I really am and not judge me by my body.
But the hijab is not a piece of judgment. It's not something that we should judge one another with. It is that which we as individual Muslim women wear to individually respond to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and to respect and honor the response of the women around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in putting on this hijab, we stand strongly as women of faith as an example to all people of what it means to take step after step in Iman.
I kept my word, read the Quran, read it again, read supporting literature, couldn't believe what I was reading because the Quran makes it perfectly clear, crystal clear, that women are equal in spirituality, worth and education. And as a feminist, I found this quite breathtaking.
I'd say to any religious haters in here tonight, do your worst. God is in my heart and will remain there regardless of what the future holds. Religion is not about destroying our freedoms, but reinforcing those beliefs.
Ask, does Islam have a women problem? Whose Islam gets put on trial, and on what basis can Islam be salvaged if we only do so on the basis of theoretical assumptions held by a few who claim greater intellectual insight? The classic and recurrent response is a recourse to the illusion that one is at fault for failing to accept divine will. The issue, we're often told, is to do with our iman.
my first encounter with Islam was the concept of hijab. And I was so enamored with the idea that I thought to myself, I'm going to take this amazing idea to the National Organization of Women and tell them about this great empowering system of hijab. I didn't do that. Instead, I learned more about Islam and became a Muslim. The hijab has been defined and described by many people in many different ways. I personally don't like the descriptions that talk about plastic around lollipops and peels around oranges and these kinds of things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't tell us in the Quran that the hijab is so that we can have an orange peel around us and be protected from ants and bugs. But rather, the verses of Quran that speak to us of hijab speak to us of empowerment. And yu'rifna wa la yu'dain. That we should put on this scarf, wear our hijab, in order that we might be known. We stand as a standard for our religion, a standard that stands strong and calls to all and says, I am a Muslim woman. I am a religious woman. I am a woman of faith. I stand for a certain way of thinking, a certain way of belief. It's interesting that throughout our history at different times, people have discussed and wanted to discuss the issue of is it fard or not? Is it an obligation or not? And I find as a woman, the argument that it is not fard, an interesting dismissal of the witnessing of women. The women of the Prophet ﷺ, by that I mean the women who were first there, who heard these verses first. Their response when they heard the verse was an immediate tearing of fabric that they had embroidered and stitched. Now, if you embroider and stitch fabric, you value it. They took this valuable fabric, tore it, and put it upon themselves. What does this tell us? It tells us that they heard, they understood, they responded. It tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that our sharia, our law, is based on looking at the personal responses of women to the Quran. Their response. Those who tell you the Prophet ﷺ didn't say, wear hijab, are dismissing the actions of these women. This is a Sahih Bukhari event. This is an event that is found in our most trusted resources. The story of alcohol, when the people of Medina threw the alcohol in the streets, we proudly speak of this event as part of the proof that finally alcohol and drinking had been made haram. In the same way, we need to proudly speak of the event of these women who stood and heard and acted and put their hijab on. This is a word we use today, hijab. It's not the word of the Quran. The Quran uses different words to indicate hijab. Jalbabihinna and khimarihinna. Both of these words meaning the scarf that I'm wearing on my head today. Also, both of them, especially jalbabihinna, indicating also that fabric that comes down and covers the rest of the body. The hijab is an empowering system. It is a system that gives women the opportunity to avoid the sexual exploitation that has been part of the capitalist system, to yet go out in the world and be an activist, be part of the cultural development of her society and her community, while avoiding the harassment that has been part and parcel of life for women as they've tried to seek leadership and strength and authority in different places today, in our modern times. The hijab is a blessing. The hijab is a standard that says, I am a Muslim. But the hijab is not a piece of judgment. It's not something that we should judge one another with. It is that which we as individual Muslim women wear to individually respond to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, and to respect and honor the response of the women around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in putting on this hijab, we stand strongly as women of faith, as an example to all people of what it means to take step after step in Iman. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad Thank you.
How to understand justice as a balance between allowing the maximum freedom possible, the freedom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that God has given us to choose to do right or choose to do wrong, with the need to have rules that regulate our lives here on this earth so that we don't impede on each other's freedoms, as well as rules or guidelines that help us develop a close and meaningful relationship with Allah so that we can attain His pleasure and ultimately His eternal presence. That can help us understand why we have some of the rules we have about being a Muslim, why Islamic civilization and Islamic scholars have developed certain ways of interacting with the Muslim community to help guide us. I think that there are some very important realities that can help us understand these things and live ultimately a more satisfying, peaceful life in harmony with the guidance that we've been given through the prophets, and particularly through the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
I love Islam. Islam is absolutely my life. There's nothing in the world as important to me as Islam. And there is nothing in the world that I am not willing to give up for the sake of Allah, for Islam, and for the Muslims. That's a fact. It's an unquestionable fact. Because Islam is everything to me, because I know the power of Islam. I know the power of Allah. I understand Allah's love. I understand His wisdom. I understand His mercy. I understand His justice. And I know there is nothing that is better. And I wish to share this with everyone. And the first thing I had to learn was how to present Islam and how to live Islam. You know, for those of you who know, I embraced Islam about 24 years ago to the consternation of most of my family. And actually the reaction of my family was so severe that one member of my family actually tried to kill me. Another member actually arranged to have me committed to a mental institute because they couldn't believe that I would, go into Islam. And yet, by applying Islam to my life, by living Islam, most of my family is now Muslim. Alhamdulillah. The thing is that everywhere you go, if you actually are living Islam, if you are demonstrating Islam, you will impact people and you will change their mindset. Now, when we go up to Congress, we go up to the Capitol Hill, talk to our senators or whoever up there, some people go up yelling and screaming and threatening. I don't see that as the way in Islam. The way in Islam is to introduce them to the truth. So first of all, I let them see me and know me as a Muslim woman, that they would know something of Islam. And then I can talk to them in gentle ways about what has to be done. And so we get a lot of things accomplished. It's not the strong, forceful, cram it down their throat way of the feminists. And I've been there, I've done that. I don't care to follow in that pathway anymore.